Perspective.
Perspective. Perspective.
Perspective.
Perspective.
Perspective.
Perspective.
Dictionary definition of feminism
Is a theory or movement concerned with
Advancing the position of women through such means as political,
Legal.
Or economic rights.
Equal to those granted men.
The goal of feminism is to challenge the systemic inequalities women face
On a daily basis.
Trust, I'll be your best friend. Call me the one. This night just can't end. Oh,
men are afraid that women will laugh at them.
Women are afraid that men will kill them.
I think that's pretty relevant. I think that a man's confidence often is measured by a woman. Like, I could say for myself personally, I struggled a lot with mental health and dating, like in my life.
It's pretty true that it's wrong. No one should ever be afraid of violence against them, and the fact that we have something that's so gendered just shows we haven't come as far as we need to come in terms of equality.
The feminist movement taught women to see themselves as victims of an oppressive patriarchy.
Self-imposed victimhood is not a recipe for happiness. While I wouldn't call the feminist movement a self-imposed victimhood, considering that our whole lives we are put in the place of victims without wanting to.
If I'm understanding it correctly, I think it kind of doesn't make sense. I don't know, I don't think it makes sense, because if the feminist movement has the goal of making it so that women are not oppressed anymore, but I guess it also kind of makes sense because the only way for you to like want to move forward is if, not the only way, but like if that's what it takes for you to realize that you need to be moving forward is if you see yourself as a victim. But also like you should already realize that the oppressive patriarchy is happening. If you succumb to it, you got to be wanting to get over that oppressive patriarchy.
I agree with the sentiment of it. I disagree with this statement as a whole. The concept of the oppression Olympics isn't a good one, who's the biggest victim, but I can understand her sentiment, though I don't think that's what the feminist movement did.
Trigger warnings are the most ridiculous, patronizing, and infantilizing creations ever to come out of feminism.
But feminists adore trigger warnings because it reinforces the idea that women are ruled by their emotions.
Are incapable of recovering from trauma
And are generally hysterical nitwits, unprepared to confront adulthood and reality.
Who is Janet Bloomfield?
I actually have this conversation with friends a lot because the culture of trigger warnings is pretty active on the West Coast, whereas I'd never heard the phrase trigger warning on the East Coast, which I think is indicative in a way of cultural differences. I think this quote ignores the realness of trauma.
I feel like it's an attack on feminism, but I think it's also making them seem like bad guys by trying to say that something that's meaningful, like trigger warnings, is something ridiculous. So I feel like it's making a joke out of something that's serious and trying to make their point not as meaningful or impactful.
I would argue and venture to say that there are a lot of men that don't deal with their emotions and get triggered a lot faster than some of their female counterparts.
Society doesn't owe us anything.
I don't need someone to pay for my female hygiene products to feel empowered. Can we work?
Yes. Can we vote?
Yes. Do we have the same rights and opportunities as men?
Yes. What rights are feminists fighting for?
What are they specifically?
What don't they have?
The ability to walk down the street without feeling like someone will harm you. I would like to do that. I'd like to go outside at nighttime and feel safe about it.
I mean, personally, I kind of start to think about that chapter we read in class on internalizing patriarchy, and often sexist thinking is most ingrained in women. It's not just about having these things on paper. It's like the culture that needs the shift.
Well, I don't have the opportunity to necessarily be heard at a meeting, whereas if a man says the same thing, people will listen. Or I might be overlooked for a promotion because people might expect that I'm going to have kids and not be able to come to work every day and choose my kids over my career. I think, yes, we can work, we can vote. I do not think we have the same rights and opportunities as men in this country.
Beauty provokes harassment, the law says.
But it looks through men's eyes when deciding what provokes it.
I agree that this is a thing that's happening, that happens, but I also think it's so stupid. Like, why are we not teaching men to not, like, rape a woman or kidnap women or sexually harass women or catcall women when they don't want to be catcalled, right?
I think that that's true, that sometimes when laws are made or decisions are made, they're not taking into account everyone's perspective. And I think that one of the most prominent ones are things that impact men or women. I think that a lot of the times when we make decisions on laws, we do look at it through the eyes of men.
What feminists refer to as microaggressions, the rest of us sane adults call life.
The concept of microaggressions encourages women to think about every single thing in the world that is or should be about them.
It encourages breathless levels of narcissism, solipsism, and just plain delusion.
Feminism encourages women to believe that they have the same reasoning and coping capabilities as toddlers. No thanks. Yeah, no, that's not.
No thanks to that. This must be a white woman, I'm guessing, Janet Bloomfield. Talking about microaggressions don't exist. Okay, she must not know any people of color. I don't think it makes me a toddler to recognize and call out a behavior that's not acceptable.
It reminds me of the trigger warning aggression.
53-year-old Cindy Bradshaw from Texas says she feels many allegations are exaggerated or not legitimate.
I feel like in the last year that girls are like, oh yeah, me too, she says. I feel like some of the girls want the sympathy and the attention.
And I feel like that really takes away from the girls that it really happened to.
I don't agree with it. I think there's that concern for sure, and that's real. But I also think you have to look at the movement historically and like the patterns that have been built up historically. And sure, some of that is happening, but many claims are also madly legitimate.
People like this are the reason why people don't say anything. This is the reason why people don't talk to other people about their experiences. This is why I didn't talk to people about my experience, because they just kind of cast you aside and say, no, that didn't happen to you.
We know patriarchy leads to successful societies because many of the major cultures that dominate the world today have a patriarchal history and a history of war and killing and violence and inequality.
I mean, past success does not determine future success. We as a nation were successful at our origin because we had slaves and we took over native people's land and their birthrights. That was our type for success before. Does that mean that we have to go back to that to be successful again today? No, it doesn't.
Oh, how easily passion twists.
What is feminism?
Feminism is focused on self-worth, particularly that of women.
Feminism is the belief that men and women are equal.
Are you a feminist?
Yes.
Yes. Do I know how to be the perfect feminist? No.
What is the Me Too movement? What is my opinion of it? The Me Too movement is a movement where people are naming their experiences because it's important for the world to know how widespread these experiences are, and for people who aren't aware to become aware how important this issue is and how many people are affected by it.
Me Too is a recent, I'd say, I don't even want to call it a movement so much as it's finally our recognition as a society that there has been so much injustice towards folks, particularly women in our society.
What's the patriarchy? What's my opinion of it? Patriarchy is a system of power in which men control government and households. I think that we need more equality and that we need more equity.
The patriarchy is just this really old dated system where men kind of rule and benefit so much more than anybody. I mean, I can speak from my experience with my wife. Getting married, I never looked at getting married as something like me getting somebody. It was like creating a bond together, right? But now that I'm with her, I can honestly say she is the superior human being in this process.
Fuck it. My perspective of the patriarchy is, yeah, it's messed up. It's fucked